Now I'm delighted to introduce our student speaker for today, Alejandro Ortega, a member of the class of 2010. Alejandro was an honor student in our program on democracy, development, and the rule of law, and he wrote his thesis on development and democratization in Chile and Peru. He also found time out here to play on the men's squash team and to manage the symphony orchestra, for which he also played trumpet. Next year, he will be in Peru working for this Global Center on Development, a research center founded by former Peruvian President Alejandro Toledo. On a personal note, I was fortunate to be Alejandro's academic advisor over the last several years, and during our meetings, I always enjoyed his sharp mind and sense of humor.
Well, I'm no Susan Rice, but she did steal a couple lines from my speech, so let's see if I can one up her a little bit. Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for coming out here to Stanford to witness the liberation of hundreds of eager young students into the most prosperous economy since the Great Depression. There's never been a better time to graduate. But no, honestly, thank you very much to all of you for coming out here. I know for my family it was quite a hike, as I'm sure it was for many of you. And we students appreciate the support on this, one of the most memorable days of our lives. But before I go any further, I would like to acknowledge all of the people who have academically enriched our 4 years at Stanford. Without them, our intellectual experiences would have been nearly impossible to achieve. And I think I speak for all of us when I say that we owe countless insights and opportunities to these fine professionals. So to all the professors, staff members, teaching assistants, and to the others who have given us our amazing education here in the International Relations Program and elsewhere, we owe you a sincere debt of gratitude. I never could quite figure out how to explain to my old man what it means to study a social science. Apparently, to a mechanical engineer and a lifelong academic, the term is as nebulous as writing a sonnet in iambic pentameter. I distinctly remember coming home after my first year of college and explaining to my incredulous dad that there is no Political Science 100 series, that I didn't have to take a regimented schedule of hierarchical courses, and that unbelievably, studying abroad was a requirement rather than a mere novelty. What kind of fuzzy load of bull is that? That's the 21st century, I replied. Well, my old man is still probably wondering what I did in these last 3 years. But he's in the audience here today, so I guess that means he hasn't abandoned me entirely. To me, as I'm sure it does to many of you, the last 4 years have been an instant. I can close my eyes and vividly recall the excitement of coasting down Palm Drive for the first time. The nervousness of seeing my parents leaving to face down college alone. The first Icon lecture where you can't help but anxiously scan the crowd for someone you know to sit next to. Flash forward 4 years, and here we are, on the precipice of a new era in our lives. What have we accomplished? How have we changed? What did these last 4 years mean in the grand scheme of things? I won't stand here at this podium and pretend to know the answers to such profound questions, but I will say confidently that in my experience here at Stanford, I have grown more as a person than at any other time in my life. Before I came to college, people told me that you learn as much outside the classroom as you do in it. In retrospect, it's easy to see the truth in a simple observation, especially if you're one of those slackers who couldn't make that event for those killer 9 a.m. sections. From forging relationships with fellow students, to working closely with world-renowned faculty, to taking advantage of the numerous cultural and academic opportunities afforded us by Stanford's vast resources. The past 4 years have been a time not just to increase our stock of knowledge, but also to refine goals and the things that we hold dear. It is not just in the halls of this prestigious institution, then, that we mature as people, but in the dorms, rehearsal halls, practice fields, conference rooms, and, alas, even the frat houses. Many of you know that before I came to Palo Alto, I lived on the outskirts of Washington, D.C. for 2 years. Apart from the aesthetic novelty of living near a big, powerful city, kid who grew up in the deserts of the Southwest, I developed an admittedly naive infatuation with the city and the politics by which it's characterized. Coming to Stanford then, about the only thing I knew for certain was that I would take a course or two in political science. After all, I never did much like math or chemistry. Like many of you, I obsessively pored over the course catalog on the Sunday before school began, trying to find the perfect class to begin my illustrious college career. I ended up taking English, economics, and archaeology. Let's just say I will never be the next Indiana Jones. It would actually be a year into my college experience before I would take a course in international relations. On the first day of Political Science 110D, Ted Schultz, the director of our program, presented the class with two different pieces of legislation. An amendment to the Uniform Time Act of 1966, which set a national policy regarding daylight savings time, and the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution of 1964, in which Congress resolved to allow President Lyndon Johnson to use military force during his campaign in Vietnam without a formal declaration of war on the legislation. Now, how much time did Congress spend debating these two pieces of legislation? It turns out that lawmakers spent 10 years dueling with lobbyists and parsing the details of the Uniform Time Act amendment. One that, while affecting the profits of such critical domestic sectors as the candy industry, for reasons related to Halloween, and radio media, had no direct effect on the safety of Americans or on the geopolitical standing of the United States. The Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, which corporate lobbyists weren't so concerned with, but which nevertheless dramatically and capriciously escalated